And our next author, Joan Colby, has published widely in journals such as Poetry, Atlanta Review, and South Dakota Review, and her awards include 2 Illinois Arts Council Literary Awards and IAC Fellowship. One of her poems won the 2014 Atlanta Review International Poetry Contest. She's published 14 books, including Selected Poems, which was the winner of the 2013 Future Cycle Press Prize, Properties of Matter, Aldrich Press, Kelsey Books, Bittersweet, Main Street Rag Press, and The Wingback Chair, Future Cycle Press. Glass Lyre Press will publish Ribcage in 2015. Colby is also Associate Editor of Kentucky Review and Future Cycle Press, Editor of Illinois Racing News, and lives on a small horse farm. Last week, I saw that she posted on Facebook that it was a good week because the Atlantic Review arrived with her winning poem, plus 3 of her Clio poems, plus White Stag arrived with 2 more poems. So hopefully reading at Waterline Writers will cap out her week. Joan Colby. If you need that.
So that's good. That's fine. That's fine. I had an accident a while ago in which I fractured my kneecap, so I'm still recovering from that. I'm going to read some poems from Bittersweet, which is a chapbook published by Main Street Rag Press. And the first poems were inspired by mythology. And the first one was inspired really by the legend of Medusa. And as you may remember, Medusa was a Gorgon, and if you looked on Medusa's face, you would be turned to stone. And so this poem is enchantments about what that experience might be like. Changing into stone is never swift, but operates according to the slow law of petrification. The process of replacing sentience with calcification is happening all the while beneath your notice. Changing into the beast is terrible. Suddenly, speech is absent, the way of looking lowered, until hunger and lust assume dimensions more intense, but less interesting. The pupils of your eyes are oblongs or slits. The hair on your neck rises. Your pelt fits loosely over the musculature, and the long preambles of love are meaningless. And the second poem that I would like to read is called Cygnus, which is about swans, and it also refers to the myth of Leda and the swan. On earth a bevy, in flight a wedge. In the wild swans 11 banished brothers are transformed to infect the skies with a presence, like the 5 flying swans that symbolize the Nordic countries. Whoever kills a swan will perish. And what of those killed by swans, like the kayaker who came too close to the nesting place, battered, overturned, and drowned? Or Leda, whose rape became a harbinger of erotic art, depictions by the great masters of that strange copulation vanished at the hands of moralists. In a local park, a plump woman of middle years is being pursued by an angry black-masked cob with a terrifying 10-foot wingspread. She totters past on high heels, wide-eyed, as Leda must have been. And the next poem is called Bad Signs, which also was inspired by some superstitions that are supposed to indicate misfortune. Bad signs. A white pigeon nests upon your chimney. A black moth flies into your house. A nightjar cries its misfortune into a shattering mirror. A nun enters your field of vision. You walk in her shadow. You gather snowdrops, sing at table. The sparrow lacks sympathy. It is condemned by God to hop in invisible hovels. You have caged innumerable sparrows. Wed your love on Thursday. You wander, until you come to a dead body, the worst omen of all. It sucks you down into its grinning mouth, through the windows of its eyes, into its bones. And now, 3 knocks at the door. A mole tunnels under the wash house. A dog howls, and a death watch beetle taps in the wood, calling to its kind. The next poem I'd like to read, these 2 poems are sort of related. This poem is called Everything is Tenuous. Everything is tenuous. Here are the trees of morning, where birds echo the songs of dinosaurs, and stones speak a language that water running over their tongues invents. The world won't pause while you slumber. The leaves mulch underfoot, the spider webs struck down so carelessly, the tiny mites you soap from your hands. Rumors abound in the hollyhocks. You are simply the minister of your garden. Each green thing has its own dogma, of which you know almost nothing. And the next poem, which is sort of associated with that, is called The Nature of Freedom. An open door is terrifying, hauls the eye to blue distances, roads narrowing like arrowheads, a sky soaring with birds of prey. A closed door cannot be borne. The heart knocks on it, beats a key of breath into shape, fits it as one body fits another. The door slides open, lovers fall apart, everything spreads amorphous, uncontained. Thus, strategy of a window, before it a table, a book face down, iris in a glass vase, outside a dead garden, bent rake, an elm dressed in rain. The next poem is called The Zohar, and the Zohar is a stone that is formed in the intestines of a horse if it ingests sand, and it, like a pearl in an oyster, continually forms, and some of them get quite large and will necessitate surgery eventually. And so this is about a Zohar. Famous stone beloved by herbalists, a universal antidote. A thief accepted poison to test its efficacy and died in great distress. Still, its powers extolled by alchemists and magicians, pulsing with the lure of faith. Under glass on a shelf in the vet sanctuary, the largest one he has extracted, formed in a horse's cecum in concentric mineral rings, the way a pearl surrounds an irritant. The horse refused its hay, stomped, groaned, lay down. A difficult diagnosis, choke. The enterolith, large as a cannonball, rare, extraordinary. A visitor declares it disgusting, freakish marble of the bowel. The vet defends his prize, the body's curious device, like everything, magical. And the next poem is called Pumps, and it is what is called an abecedonarian, in that each line begins with the letter of an alphabet. And We were having a problem with our well pump when I wrote this poem, and I was also thinking about the pump of the heart. Someone that I love has a heart condition, and as I say, each line begins with a consecutive letter of the alphabet. Always a disaster if a pump breaks, its blue heart causing a loss of prime, loss of direction, the gist of everything reversing its principles, flowing back to the reservoir, generous or frugal, like any heart, its steady beat both hurtful and intolerant of disturbances of rhythm. The jolt that sparks, then kindles the sort of pulse incompatible with love. Pour into it the fluid of mercy. Transfusions such as these result in nothing if under the obdurate surface there is a paucity of will. The water table perhaps quenching its thirst deeper than you remembered. Desire rusting in the old stalled courses. You can try to disassemble all that undid your hopes. Pray the bad tempo vanishes, that at last you'll reach healing waters, cold, good as x-rays, showing no blockage. Now you are back in business, back in the zoo of the loving. So some poems are just fun to write. This poem is called Radish, and it's just a contemplation on the vegetable, the radish. Rose red, snow white duality. It might have been a radish that inspired such myths. A perfect belly of tartness, sharp, crisp, cool, and hot simultaneously, like an embarrassment, a word spoken you can't take back, or the crazy love affair you knew was going nowhere. Turret of tang, peasant in a red cap, not sweet, not bitter, but purely itself, fast grower, shirking dirt from its Kremlin, pushing like a birth, smart as a slap, nothing bloody about it, brazen as a backside, jeering the salad from riddance to uproar. Take this, red fist, white flesh, taste this, polka dancer, papoose, full purse. This poem is called Barn Fire, and barn fires often start when hay that is moist just ignites itself. It isn't necessarily an electrical fire or anything like that. The hay can just generate heat to the point where it will ignite. Barn fire. Green, dense, moist, packed and stacked 10 high to fill the loft. A narrow aisle filters light lauded with dust. A yeasty smell, good enough to eat or kindle. How the heat begins to smolder, deep, deep within the wick of bale. A thin snake of smoke like the contrail of a high-flying jet echoing its sound breaks. Swallow nests, then the great beams catch and glow. That's how it starts. Not a cigarette discarded or a wire gnawed by rats. The provender ignites its own safekeeping. Its axioms of immolation bless the harvest with a baleful flame. Here's the rest of that story of storage, of keeping safe, of keeping everything inviolate. Each story is a myth in which someone discovers fire, and then it all begins. And let's see. This poem is called A World of Sadness, and it was actually written for a musical composition that inspired me to write the poem, and the title of the music was A World of Sadness. You will not be sad in this world, though all the music haunts hills garbed in fog, though lilies fade in their turquoise vases, the slow water passing languorously beneath the ancient wharf. A woman on a bench clasps her hands, the book unopened. The lost poem written by a slave whose tongue was severed for telling how it felt, this loneliness. Acknowledge the red knob of the closed door, the broken window where a child peers into a littered alley, the rags of dream you gather to knot about your throat. Renouncing sadness, that old bicycle whose wheels no longer revolve, the brakes that seize, pitching you into a pool of milk. Adorn yourself with the black silks of all the midnights spent weeping. It was not lost so much as safekeeping. The locket congealed with starshine, the opal rings of your governing planet, saturnine, ironic, denying the sadness that hoods the visible world. And the next poem is called Writing to the Dead, and it's about kind of the impossibility of things that we wish perhaps we had said to people when they were still living among us. At the wall tuck letters between the stones, or set them afire to send smoke signals, a calligraphy of ash. Tie them to the legs of pigeons famed for homing. Let the eyelash of Providence sew them to the clouds. Inscribe scrolls for angels, stamp clay tablets with bird prints. Let the words rise in a wash of ink. Send emails into cyberspace to be kidnapped by demon mailers. If nothing else, stuff them into abandoned mailboxes that angle haphazardly into all weathers, undelivered of everything you sought to say and hesitated. And the final poem that I will read is the title poem of the book, which is Bittersweet. And bittersweet, of course, is a vine that clambers all over everything, and oftentimes we use the berries as winter decorations. A slate darkness where thought meets its executioner. You leave that house key in the mailbox. Where you are going, the roads diminish to gravel, then dirt, then ruts divided the way loss creates ridges of bad clay. Dregs of bad wine coat the words you shut your mouth upon. Sadness is sweeter than feeling nothing. Orange and red, the gaudy berries clash to display a wintry disdain. You airbrush the picture until your hands clasp, then grip, then loosen. The way the air catches a leaf and sets it down to be trodden. How the tongue senses one thing, then another, and loves them both, loves them anyway.